comes to women's safety, India is the worst. That's according to a recent survey, a poll conducted by the Thomson Reuters Foundation, which has found that India is the most dangerous country for women. The survey was first done in 2011 when India ranked 4th on the list. 7 years later, the group decided to do another status check and apparently found that the lot of women in India had only worsened. The premise of the poll, or should we say, the question they asked was this: what was being done to address the overall risks faced by women in the countries that were declared dangerous in 2011? Had any progress been made? The criteria for this ranking included healthcare, access to economic resources, customary practices, sexual violence, non-sexual violence, and human trafficking. The report says that in India, levels of violence against women are still very high. It claims that even five and a half years after the rape and murder of a student on a bus in the national capital shocked the country, little has been done to improve the situation of women. This, of course, is a reference to the bus gang rape case in New Delhi, better known as the Nirbhaya case. India has been ranked as the most dangerous on the basis of 3 factors. Number 1, risks of sexual violence and harassment that women face. This includes not only the crimes committed, but also the lack of access to justice in rape cases. Number 2, dangers from cultural and traditional practices like forced marriage, honor killing, female infanticide. And on number 3, risks from human trafficking, which includes forced labor, sex slavery, and domestic servitude. Pakistan has ranked 6th on this list of countries that are considered most dangerous for women. The only Western nation in the top 10 is the United States, an addition that has surprised many. Experts say the US got an entry into this hall of shame because of the Me Too movement, which has dominated headlines for the last few months. The survey found that the United States ranked 3rd when it comes to women facing risk of sexual violence, harassment, and being forced and coerced into sex. It is nobody's case that India doesn't have an appalling record when it comes to crimes against women, but is it really the worst in the world? We decided to fact check. But in politics, there is little patience for facts. They operate on perception. So the opposition in India lost no time in gunning for the government over a report whose credentials, at best, are questionable. Look at how it played out.
December 2012. Streets of India's national capital filled with anger and outrage, demanding justice for the 23-year-old who was brutalized in New Delhi. A rape so gruesome that it shook the core of the nation. At the time, the state was ruled by a Congress government. Gandhi, who would go on to become the president of the party, was nowhere to be seen. No public appearances, no news briefings. Cut to 2018. As the leader of India's principal opposition party, Rahul Gandhi was the first to use the Reuters report to slam the government. He used the survey that found India to be the most dangerous country for women to target the Prime Minister and his government. Taking to Twitter, the Congress president said, and I quote, "While our PM tiptoes around his garden making yoga videos, India leads Afghanistan, Syria and Saudi Arabia in rape and violence against women. What a shame for our country." Poking fun at the Prime Minister's fitness challenge video, Rahul Gandhi tagged a news report with his tweet. A news report that cited the survey on the high incidence of rape and violence against women in the country. Social activists too were quick to blame the government.
I'm ashamed of the fact that the deteriorating situation of women's safety in this country is not at all concerning anyone for that matter at the helm of affairs.
In the run-up to next year's general elections, this report has given Rahul Gandhi and his party the required ammunition, a plank on which elections can be fought. Because clearly, politics takes precedence for the party. Bureau Report, WION.
Coming back to the facts, the findings of this report and why it's a flawed analysis. Countries were judged, as I told you, on 7 parameters. Let me repeat. The respondents who were consulted were asked which 5 nations in the world they thought were the most dangerous for women. Afghanistan comes second on this list. It fared the worst in 4 of the 7 questions that were asked. But there are no numbers to back that claim. The Afghan Independent Human Rights Commission reported that only around 3,700 cases of violence against women were reported in the country last year. Experts have slammed this report. They call it incomplete because a proper mechanism to record crime does not exist in Afghanistan. The other problem is the country's attitude around issues related to sex and sexual assault. What constitutes a crime against women? It also overlooks the fact that large parts of the country are still in the control of Taliban fighters after nearly 17 years of war. Where are these numbers coming from? But then again, the makers of this report say that this is based on perception, not on fact. Reporting from the rebel-held areas in Syria is sparse, and there is no hard fact around the treatment of women in the region. Syria comes a close third on that Reuters list. As with Afghanistan, there is no mention of figures of violence against women in that country. Instead, it harps on the impact of the 7-year-long war. Like Afghanistan, parts of Syria are or were until recently held by militant organizations. There is sexual violence by government and non-government forces alike, and most of it goes unreported. There is no apparatus in place to get figures from the hinterlands in this country, which evidently is the only parameter that seems to have been taken into account by experts consulted for this particular report. Next comes Pakistan. Even Pakistan comes after India in this report. Over 10,000 cases of gender-based violence were reported across Pakistan in the year 2014. This was when Pakistan's population was 18 crores, which translates to a 0.05% crime rate. In the same year, almost 3 lakh cases of violence against women were recorded against a population of 1 billion in India. Translate it to percentage and it comes to 0.03%. Look at the population crime ratio and you'll know why this report should be taken with a sack of salt, and of course it's not based in fact. If you're still not convinced, let's tell you how these results were arrived at. Between March 26th and May 4th, the Thomson Reuters Foundation surveyed 548 experts from across the globe. This group consisted of academicians, health workers, policymakers, journalists, social commentators and NGO workers. The survey was conducted online, by phone or in person. It was spread across 6 regions: Europe, Africa, the Americas, Southeast Asia, South Asia and the Pacific. The respondents were asked to answer a questionnaire based on 6 to 7 parameters: healthcare, cultural traditions, discrimination, sexual violence, non-sexual violence, human trafficking. They were asked to pick the 5 most dangerous countries from the list of 193 United Nations member states. The questions that were asked to these 548 experts read, in your view, what is the most dangerous country in the world for women in terms of the 6 parameters. It does not specify what view these answers are based on. If they're just views of the respondents, or is there any proof to substantiate that claim? Look at the sample size. The world's female population is close to 3 billion. The number of people who took this survey, 548. 3 billion, 548. Not even a fraction of the whole population. Reuters is one of the world's oldest and most trusted media agency, but it has in the past too fallen prey to a narrative that was being pushed by a certain section. Remember, 2 months back, Reuters published a report on the state of Indian media. This report claimed that journalists are increasingly facing threats for publishing news critical of the government. On the face of it, the report seemed alarming. But what many missed is the fact that in publishing this report, Reuters flouted the basic tenet of journalism itself: getting all sides of a story. They only highlighted the version of the quote-unquote left-leaning journalists and underscored the contrarian view. The report was asymmetrical. It pushed a lopsided agenda, a driven story. And what we are saying, unlike what Reuters is saying, is based and backed by fact. Take a look at the last comprehensive report released by the United Nations on violence against women. The number of rapes reported per 100,000 people is analyzed. India fares nowhere close to most European nations, Canada and the US. The United Nations report released in 2012 claims that Sweden tops the list with around 66 cases recorded per 100,000 citizens. Ever imagine the country that is home to Swiss Alps, that has an employment rate of 70%, could be one of the most unsafe nations in the world for women? The next European nation that comes in the United Nations top 10 list is Belgium. 27 cases recorded per 100,000 people. Belgium ranks 6th on that list of comparative numbers. Belgium is followed by the United States of America, where the national average of reported cases of sexual violence against women stands at 26.6. The world's most powerful nation, the most developed one, a country with a GDP of almost $20 trillion, comes 7th on that list. The last two spots on the United Nations list are also claimed by European nations. Norway at the 9th position, where the rate is 22.3%, and Finland at the 10th place, where the rate is 18.7%. According to this report, India is nowhere in the list of the top 10 nations if the rate of crime against women is to be seen. Countries like Sweden, Australia, New Zealand, which are considered safe, precede India when it comes to these numbers. Let us tell you now where India stands. India stands at the 46th position with an average of 1.8 cases of rape reported per 100,000 people. There are factors like social stigma, which account for underreporting in such cases in India, which many would claim reveals a huge gap. But even if we consider that 90% of rapes go unreported in India, we would still be at a lower rate than the USA. So that is how things stand. And yes, India has problems when it comes to crimes against women, but it certainly isn't the worst in the world by no stretch of the imagination.